Hey guys, welcome back to the Power Project. I am honored to have my guest on today. You guys may have seen an article popping around Facebook that went absolutely viral. I'm a Bark US, affiliate. I love this app. It's an app for keeping your kids safe online. So I had the first email that came through sharing this story about this undercover operation where a woman had posed and they had busted a lot of child predators, and it was a very in-depth article. And then immediately it just went crazy on social media. I started seeing it everywhere. I'm like, guys, this is the app I keep telling you about that I personally use to monitor my kids' online usage. So I had moms start asking questions and sending me text messages and emails and, hey, what is this you've been talking about? I really would like to become more aware of what my kids are doing online and who they're talking to. And so I did what I do best, which is I go find the founder of Bark and say, hey girl, let's have a chat and you can talk to my audience because there's a lot to shove in. So I have Titania Jordan on today. She is the Chief Parenting Officer of Bark.us. And I am so honored because I know that your schedule is absolutely insane at this point in business. So thanks for being on, and how are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am okay. I'm not going to be like, oh, everything's great because, I'm a mom and life is hard and life is crazy, but like, I'm also healthy and I'm alive and I'm here today to talk with you. So like, overall, I'm great.
Yeah, well, it's one of those, like, my husband has been out of town and I haven't realized like how much he really does that I actually don't acknowledge. And so I've been doing the single mom thing and the business thing. And then I'm like, wait, I have podcast interviews and events and, oh, I have children to keep alive also. So
It's a
yeah,
lot.
it's a lot, like you said, and it's not always just rainbows and butterflies, but every single day that we're given is a gift. And
Yes.
I believe that every time I get to connect with someone like you and share your message and your mission with the world is the gift at that moment for me. And
Yeah.
I love being able to share that with others. So before we dive into all of the questions and the education that I know that you have to offer my audience, can you tell us a little bit about who you are as a mom, a wife, a friend, a daughter, what all the roles you play? And
Sure. Yeah. You feel free to interrupt at any time in case I get long-winded. Um, So yeah, I am a 39-year-old mom of one human baby and one fur baby.
I know
This
I've been
is
looking, I'm like, look at that little baby.
oh no, this is Chloe, my Chihuahua. She's my baby girl. But my son is 11 years old, and yeah, I wanted to have more kids, but after his birth, there were some complications where I was told that it was too risky for me to have any more children, biologically at least. And so at the time, I was wondering, why God? Like I love kids, and there's so many kids that need homes, and I want to be a mom, but my career has also been, I feel like, one of my children, and so maybe that's why. We'll find out. I guess at the end of my life, but yeah. So on that note of career, I am currently the chief parenting officer of a company called Bark that keeps children safer online and in real life. Before that, I have been a part of three other startups that served at the intersection of parenting and tech. Um, and then before that, I had a social media marketing agency that I started um, when my son was born so that I could work from home. Um, Before that, I started my career just in corporate America post college at a radio station. It was the top 40 station in town. I live in Atlanta. And so it was so cool right out of college to see Usher and Jennifer Lopez just walking by my desk. I'm just the intern and I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I can get on board with this.
I get nervous every time I talk to anyone like on the podcast that has a radio background because I'm like, listen, girl, My audience appreciates content and the quality is not incredibly amazing. So yeah, I'm always like, oh, she's been on the radio.
No, it's, in the age of everybody it can be a content curator. The content speaks for itself outside of the audio quality or the video quality. There's just
Right.
no way
Right.
it can always be perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank God, because we are not perfect here.
Preach.
We are highly accomplished, but we are not perfect.
Yes, yeah. And on that note, because this, serves people in the faith-based vertical, I don't always get a chance to talk about that side of my life, but I'm just thankful that I can hear. And so for anybody listening, I am a Christian. I love Jesus, love God. I also am not super judgy. Like I live in Atlanta, so was raised Southern Baptist, and there are certain things that come with that stereotype, and I probably don't fall into that stereotype. I'm very um, just very open and very non-judgmental. And anyway, I think sometimes Christians get a bad rap just by having that word associated with their name. I think we're sometimes labeled as closed-minded and non-accepting and really backwards. And hopefully through my work and opportunities like this, I have an opportunity to give Christianity a good name, a good reputation, and spreading the word that we can love Jesus and we can love each other, and we can also not be perfect. And there's a lot of grace there, and that's okay.
So glad that you went there with that, because I love Jesus. I also cuss a little. I also,
Or a lot.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think that when we literally just say, like, yes, I love God, but that doesn't make me different than you, better than you, more perfect than you. Yes, I go to church on Sunday, but I have church right here on a computer where I may have yoga pants on the bottom and my hair hasn't been washed in a few days, right? Like, it's the whole, like you said, breaking that stigma down, and then also being willing to say that we, the church, have an obligation to talk about the subjects that are difficult and
Yep.
nitty and gritty, and say, hey, I'm a Christian mom. Hey, my kid accidentally found some porn on a phone, or hey, my
Mm-hmm.
kid purposely found some
Mm.
porn on a phone, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and just pretending that this doesn't happen to us and it doesn't exist in our house is it's perpetuating the problem.
Yeah. And one thing that I struggled with early on in I think my mid 20s was I thought I could just pray my anxiety away. I thought I could just pray my depression away. Um, and I went to see a counselor at my church, and he was like, look, I take medicine for my blood pressure. Like, for whatever reason, that is what I have. And so, what makes your depression or anxiety any different than my blood pressure or somebody's diabetes or whatever? Like, there's a stigma associated with mental health specifically, that I also like to work to reduce the stigma around, because you can be a Christian and have depression. You can be a Christian and have anxiety, and um, it's okay to take medicine if you need it for that sort of thing.
Amen and amen. And it's okay to talk about it and say, hey,
Yeah.
guess what? I'm not okay. Like,
Yes.
I am forgiven. I am saved by grace. I am covered in the blood, but I'm not okay. It's okay.
Right.
So there's a couple of things I kind of want to unpack
Hmm.
on this. So and because I've heard this in a lot of different realms from other women in the IT space, and I've heard so many women say, like, I'm a woman of faith in the IT space, and that's a
Hmm.
really tricky balance.
Yeah.
Doing what you do, and we're going to get into that in a bit, but doing what
Hmm.
you do, with it being such a heavy subject, I don't know how you don't bring like all of the God and all of the Jesus to all of the IT space. And I don't know how anyone really exists in the space that you're positioning yourself in without having a firm faith. So how do you even navigate that?
Um, it's hard. Initially, just being in my Southern Baptist bubble, the internet brought on a world of exposure to other ideals and lifestyles and points of view and politics that I had always been made to believe were just bad and wrong. And so it was actually really enlightening to hear other points of view and to have powerful discourse with people that was productive and respectful. There's plenty of, not respectful and not productive dialogue online, but so it's cool being in this world because I'm able to dialogue with a lot of intelligent people that don't always believe what I believe or believe anything at all. And it help me refine why I believe what I believe. I've got to dig in and research and get to the core of why do I believe. And there are some things that I've got to come to terms with the fact that I will never be certain of. But that's where faith comes in. So that's one element of it. Another thing is just, you see some of the hardest stuff you can possibly imagine. There are a lot of people that know bad things happen to good people, but if they don't watch the news, they don't necessarily have to be faced with it. In our line of work specifically, bad things are happening to children every single day. And you can easily get bogged down in that and brought down by it, or you can let it fuel your desire to work harder and work smarter and pursue the mission and educate as many families as you can and empower them so that hopefully it won't happen to another child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how do you, and I want to hear like the backstory of the creation of the company and your fuel for that. But a question I've had from several people, I put it out there with my network. What's your really number one question you would like to ask Titania? Like, what would you like to know? And it was interesting because it wasn't actually about the online monitoring or anything. Their number one question was, how do you day in and day out see the most depraved form of humanity? And how do you sleep at night? How do you allow yourself to not like walk around in complete fear and angst and anxiety? Yeah. And one said, and how do you not like murder these individuals? Like, how do you not seek vengeance on your own?
Oh gosh, it's hard. It's really hard. So a few things. One is full disclosure. I take 20 milligrams of Prozac every day because apparently my body doesn't have a good balance of serotonin or dopamine or whatever it is. Like if I don't do that, I am more prone to panic attacks brought on by encountering this really difficult stuff. So I take medicine to help me get over that. Also, another thing I'm navigating is, I was sexually abused as a child, as a 6-year-old. And so this experience and this trauma is personal to me. It's very real to me, and it can be re-traumatizing. So I've got to be very careful of what I see and what I encounter and what I hear about. But it's also part of the therapy too, because you can either put that hard stuff away in a box and bury it and think you're never going to have to deal with it. But whether you like it or not, it will surface and it will manifest through other problem areas in your life. And so I choose to deal with it, talk about it freely and publicly to help reduce the stigma for other people who are survivors. And it's more than you'd think. I mean, it's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys under the age of 18. So it's not like this random thing that happens. It happens to a lot of people. And it's terrible. And we need to A, shed light on it, and B, fight it. We have got to fight it. And so that's really what it is that keeps us all going, is if we don't do the work that we're doing, more children will be hurt. And so it's yucky, it's terrible, it's awful, but we are optimistic and have hope that we will make an impact. We will protect children. We will prevent this from happening for more children. And it's the same for an EMT or a police officer or fire rescue professionals that pull up on the scene of horrific accidents. How do they deal with it? It's a lot of, you've got to be mindful of self-care. You've got to get enough sleep. Sometimes I go easy on the coffee because that has a propensity to make me anxious. I personally really tried to avoid alcohol because whenever I drink the next day, I'm just not worth anything. And every minute is a gift and I want to make the most of it. And it also just makes me more prone to anxiety and depression if I drink alcohol. And I know some people use it to relax, and everybody has to weigh that for how it affects them personally. I make time for exercise. I have to exercise. Even if I don't want to, I will at least get outside for like a 20-minute walk or try to do a yoga class. I have to do something to be physically active, because if my body is strong, my mind will be strong, my heart will be strong, I'll sleep better at night. And it's just so important. Taking time to decompress too. If I'm always online, if I'm always answering emails and always on Instagram looking at everybody's best lives, that's not going to be very good for me. So just turning everything off and just cuddling my dog and hugging my family and doing art, painting, getting out in nature, just anything to connect with the real world is also key.
And I find it interesting that the people in this space are some of the very first ones to say, disconnect from tech. Yes. And go explore nature and go enjoy nature and get outside. It's a great tool. It is a great resource, but we cannot let it be our lives. Yes. And certainly not how we connect with creation and people. And so what type of boundaries do you have? Do you have like set parameters of times that you are on your phone, not on your phone?
It's less about that, just because the nature of my work, I can't do that. Yeah. But it's a great strategy. For me, it's, I prioritize sleep, because if you don't get enough sleep, your mental health is off and your whole day is shot. Mm-hmm. So, earlier in my career, I would, after my son would go to bed, I would get back on the computer and work. Now I make sure that I'm asleep no later than 10 p.m., sometimes 9 p.m. Mm-hmm. So prioritizing sleep helps me be, as strong as I can mentally and physically the next day. Also, I just pay attention to what I'm doing on a screen. Mm-hmm. Am I doing something productive, or am I passively avoiding feelings? Am I avoiding something I need to do instead, whether it's laundry or dishes or a tough conversation? Like, I just try to be very intentional with, why am I on this thing right now? And it's mm-hmm. okay to be entertained. It's okay if you want to watch a Netflix show or be on Instagram for a little bit and just be entertained. But again, it all goes back to, we are only on this planet for a very short amount of time. Whether I have one more day left here or 40 more years left here, it's still not a lot of time. And so what are you going to do with that time? I personally don't feel like I need to be zoning out with tech for a majority of that time. And that's something really important to convey to our kids. They're going to learn more by watching you than by listening or tuning you out. And so that's a conversation I have with my child multiple times, because he loves gaming and we let him play video games. We let him watch TV and that sort of thing. But I'm always very, very intentional around talking with him about the fact that screens light up a part of your brain that is the pleasure center. It's the same part of your brain that gets excited when you eat ice cream or nerds or whatever. And when you feed that part of your brain, it wants more and more and more. It's the addiction part. And so you have to be very in control. So, I say to him, are you in control of Fortnite, or is Fortnite in control of you? And that is the same thing that mommy has to do with Instagram. Is mommy in control of Instagram, or is Instagram in control of her? Feeling like you're a hamster in a wheel of just, I have to respond to every single notification, is not a good place to be. And so if you feel like you can't keep up with the digital communications that are heading your way, it's time to strip it back, unsubscribe, have some time off for yourself. Again, get outside. Like, who is in control, you or the tech?
Oh, and I think it's such a relevant point to hit home right now with everyone. I have multiple businesses that are ran online. And so I understand, I get it when, and I know when my mind is spinning and I'm not able to focus and I'm not clear, I know it's time for yoga, and it's time
Yes.
for meditation, and it's time for physical activity. Like, and it's time to just walk away. I get it. I totally understand.
Yeah.
So I want to really like talk about Bark, what it is.
Our CEO, Brian Basin, is a dad of 2, and he was working at Twitter at the time. He's so smart and has an extensive background in social media and technology. And so it came time for his oldest to get an iPod Touch. And when he was looking at it and realized, wow, he can access all this stuff and that can access him. And he looked at the landscape of parental controls and was like, there's nothing out there that's like good, that's going to help keep him safe online and not be another job for me to do. So he left Twitter to start Bark.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't know that.
Well, again, I wish I could take the glory and the credit for this amazing idea, but I can't. Thankfully, Brian reached out to me to join the team, and I've been a part of the team for a very long time, and I'm so thankful for that. And so now let's talk about what Bark is and what Bark does. And I'll start with an example. You know, my son is 11. He has a smartphone, which some kids aren't ready for a smartphone at 11, and that's okay. So this isn't a conversation about when is the best time to give your kid a smartphone, but he does have one. And the phone number that is associated with his phone used to belong to somebody else. And so apparently that was a man who was receiving notifications for medicine that would help him enlarge his member. And so that was a fun conversation to have with my child. Thankfully, I had Bark monitoring my son's phone. And so I got an alert for sexual content via text and email. It said, hey, your son has encountered sexual content. Here's what happened. And it was a screenshot of the text that came into him. And so he came to me about it, actually, which was incredible. But if he hadn't, I would know, man, my 11-year-old now potentially has questions about erections and erectile dysfunction. And, you know, it might be time for me or his dad to talk to him about that. Thankfully, though, he took a screenshot of it and texted it to me and was like, Mom, I got this sketchy text. How do I block this person? And I was like, yes, like, thank you for telling me. Because so many times kids aren't going to want to surface these things to their parents, because a lot of times a parent's first gut instinct is take it away. Like, you shouldn't have that then. And that's a fine reaction, but it's also not always productive and could potentially make your child not want to bring other things to your attention in the future, because they don't want to lose their access to tech and gaming and their friends. And so anyway, that's an example of just how Bark works and what it does. But high level, Bark is tech that keeps kids safer online. How does it do that? You go to bark.us, that's our website. You sign up. It's a free 7-day trial, and then it's $9 per family per month after that.
Unless you have the podcast discount, and then it's $7.
Oh, yes. See, we are winning. We are winning together.
Yep.
And so then you'll connect Bark to your children's devices and accounts. We cover over 30 social media platforms, text messages and emails, iOS devices, Android devices. We even have a Chrome extension, you know, but don't get bogged down in all those details, because every family has a different tech setup. So you'll connect the kids' devices and accounts, and then it's an algorithm that just runs in the background. And when it encounters something problematic, like sexual content, cyberbullying, thoughts of suicide and depression, potential drug use, online predators, and acts of violence, it'll then send you an alert via text and email with not only what happened and where it happened and between whom it happened, but it'll also give you best recommended next steps for how to address, whether it's, well, here's how you block this contact, or here's what you need to do to report to law enforcement, or here are some mental health resources for your child. So that's what Bark does in a nutshell.
I have to tell you a couple of funny things about that as a Bark user. So my kids they do airsoft wars, right? And so I get notifications all the time about like the airsoft violence, right? Gun violence. And then they shoot basketball after school. So I get notifications, you know, when do you want to shoot today? Are we going to shoot after school? And so we have a lot of dialogue amongst my son and his friends. They all know I see everything that they talk about. And so they think it's funny to try to make my bark notifications blow up during the day. They're like intentional about it, and they think it's so cute. But I'm like, but because of that, like they know that it's a safe place for starters, but that also that okay, there are people paying attention and we need to be held accountable. You know, he's in 8th grade, so it's that world. So I get a lot of notifications in the 8th grade, and then some of the Chrome notifications will go off when he does his history papers that are talking about war. But it's so useful and it's so helpful. And we have discussions when there are things that notifications that I receive that are depressive or a little cyberbullying, or, you know, we have the conversation about that. And he has his freedom where I don't have to go through his phone every night because it's being done for me. It really takes a big burden off my shoulders. And it also like covers things that fall through the cracks, because I've had parental controls on all of my kids' devices. But for Christmas, my youngest got a new Chromebook, and I didn't have him set up on Bark yet. And I didn't realize I didn't have his YouTube settings turned correctly.
Yep.
So while he was looking at what's inside videos, like, you know, where they cut things apart and look inside, some really disturbing things came up that I have shared with my network since then that I can't even believe are on YouTube, because it's straight grooming videos. Like it's like normalizing really, really awful conversations to children in an animated cartoon style. So thank you for being a part of this and doing what you do, because I, as a parent, am a huge advocate. So that's my Bark commercial.
Yeah. Well,
literally.
It's yeah, and you know, you can toggle your severity alerts. If you're getting too many benign violent alerts, you can maybe change that setting a little bit. And
no, I don't want to toggle anything. I want everything.
I know, me too. But some parents don't. And so, you know, we try to cater to all different parenting styles and choices. And on that note too, if you're the type of person that thinks, okay, I don't need to monitor, I'll know when something's wrong with my child, or I'll be able to spot check my child's phone, I want you to really think again, because children are going to delete the most concerning pieces of content from their phone before they get home from school or their friend's house. They'll delete the text thread. They'll hide photos in a vault app that looks just like a calculator app. They'll use secret messaging apps that maybe look like something like a coloring book. You know, it's just, kids are smart, and I hate to say it, but they're way more tech savvy than we are, because they're digital natives. Yeah. So just keep that in mind, that you could literally make it your full-time job to monitor your kid online yourself and still miss stuff. So it's not easy. It is not easy to be a parent in 2020.
No, it's not. I tell people that it's really like the scariest time to parent kids and teenagers, and because every single thing is at their fingertips. Like all the good in the world and all the bad in the world is at their fingertips.
So true.
So you and for anyone here that is there's so much that can be said about monitoring online safety and parental controls and Bark and all the resources. You guys have a great blog where you give step-by-step tutorials and videos, and it's not just installing the Bark app. It's also part of what you're saying, that the digital natives thing stuck out to me, because I'm the generation, I'm assuming you're close to my generation. We're the generation that grew up without it, and it was introduced in our like early adulthood. So there's like a little title that I can't ever remember. It's like not a Gen X, but a Gen something. We're like a very short decade period. Yeah. And then, you know, our parents are the ones who didn't have it all their lives until later. And then our children have been birthed into it. But it's our responsibility to educate ourselves and learn. And it's only going to become a bigger thing And so we have to learn how, just like you had to learn how to breastfeed, right? Like you had to learn
Yes.
latch, just like you had to learn how to teach them safety on a bicycle, just
Mm-hmm.
all the stages of life. This is our responsibility as a parent. And we're doing a great disservice to an entire generation if we're not being aware, if we're thinking it's too large of a problem and it's too big of a deal. So I
It's
want,
so true.
so I really want to lean into the online predator part, because I do,
Yes.
I'm an advocate in the fight against human trafficking. I try to convince people on a regular basis that it doesn't look like the movie Taken. It's not some scary dude hiding out in the aisle of Walmart that is following you on a trafficking sting. Like it's someone online building a solid relationship with your child. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the biggest takeaways. And I've spoken with law enforcement officials that have been working in this field of human trafficking for over 30 years. And it's the fact that there is no profile for an online predator. It could be the sketchy guy in Walmart. It can also be the acclaimed pediatrician that has been treating children for 30 years. They are businessmen with families and pets, and they are dudes that live in their mother's basement. It runs the gamut. And so because of that, because there is no profile, that means that some of the people who are harming our children, even without ever meeting them in real life, are people who are typically trusted members of society. And so that's one thing that will help reduce the stigma and raise awareness, is that unfortunately, teaching kids that anybody can be a tricky person, you've got to trust your gut. If it feels off, it's off, and it doesn't matter who that is, whether it's a principal or a doctor or a preacher or a teacher. If it feels off, it's off, and you listen to that. And so with our Predator Project, if you haven't read the piece, I encourage it, but, trigger warning, if you, can accept the hard things that are in it. A member of our special projects team at Bark went undercover, a 37-year-old mom went undercover as an 11-year-old on Instagram and posted very, very innocent content, very typical. Hey, I'm 11. Here's a coffee cup. Here's my dog. Here's a flower. Here's a fun Snapchat filter, puppy dog filter, whatever, like really normal stuff. And within moments had messages from adult men looking to contact her for nefarious purposes. A lot of questions we receive are, well, would this have happened if it was not a public account? And we actually tested it with public and private accounts. You can still get messages even if your account is private. So that's key for parents to know. Your children's accounts should be private. That will help mitigate some of that risk, but it won't eliminate it. Also, Instagram recently launched the ability in their app to toggle off direct messages if you're a child. But again, there's nothing stopping your child from going in Instagram after and untoggling it. So again, it's a game of cat and mouse.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, we went undercover, and these men. What was really surprising was just the speed at which the conversations escalated from, "Hey, you're cute. Are you home alone? Do you have a boyfriend? How old are you?" Even though it clearly said on her profile.
Mm-hmm.
To, "Would you like to trade pictures? Can I pay you for pictures of your feet? Show me a picture of yourself with your top off. Please, baby." And then escalating to some really, really harsh, controlling behavior. Where are you now? Send me a picture of you touching your nose. I don't believe you're going to the grocery store. Text me a picture of the cereal you're looking at. Like really, really controlling behavior. Sextortion, threatening to use photos and conversations against the profile if she didn't comply with certain demands. Video chatting. If your child's on Instagram, a video call can just start from anywhere around the world, even if they're not friends with that person. And so the men that would call this persona, just to see a glimpse of a child, it was just disgusting.
And I'm a member of a coalition where we have Homeland Security and FBI and 42 organizations that are all diligently fighting this and acutely aware of this. Even being involved there, I was highly taken aback by this article. And I'm not certain if it's an article that you all had put out or something I read somewhere else. But what I didn't realize, they talked about online predators and the amount of time they will spend at a computer, where when they do a sting and a bust, sometimes that predator's been there for days, not leaving a computer, because they are searching for children online. They're not accidentally finding your child online. They're there for a reason.
Absolutely. It's that's another thing with this project. You know, we gave these adult men every out possible. We were not sitting there like a mousetrap trying to do everything we could to catch them. We kept giving them outs, like, hey, just want you to know, like, I'm 15, is that okay? And, you know, constantly reminding them, like, this is a child, this is a child, this is a child. And yet they just wanted more. And, your hope is that maybe they're just made a mistake and maybe they're having a weak moment and this isn't something that they do frequently. But as you dig in, you realize that it's awful and it's prevalent. One organization that we've been, really honored to work with is the Child Rescue Coalition. And they're working to raise awareness to the level of being able to identify computers around the world that have this material on them, child sex abuse material. And so knowing that and being able to deploy law enforcement to the doors of the homes of these people is really, really empowering.
It's huge.
Yeah. So there's a lot we uncovered, but there's also a lot of hope. Another thing that was really scary is just, again, the speed with which a child can be abused online. So you might let your 12-year-old stay home alone. They have an iPhone. They're playing around on Instagram. By the time that you put your car in reverse to back down the driveway just to go to the grocery store and back, they could have encountered male genitalia, videos of masturbation, requests for things and acts that they might not even know about. I mean, this happened over and over and over again and very quickly. And it's just a stark contrast to our day when somebody with those intentions would have to get to know us, be a coach, be a teacher, have multiple interactions with us before that sort of thing could take place. So it's really devastating.
Are your kids on social media, or is your son on social media?
No. And I say that. He has Spotify. Because he loves music. And I just recently realized, and you can have followers on Spotify. And so that's kind of an important thing to him right now, is like, oh, wow, my friend so-and-so has 34 followers and I only have 32. And I don't like that. It's not enough for me to say you can't have Spotify, but it's enough for me to be like, you know what? The amount of followers does not dictate your worth as a human. And we have to have conversations around just how that can affect your self-esteem. And so all sorts of tech now has a social element to it. Everything seems to be gamified these days. So no, I do not want my son to have Instagram or Snapchat or any social media platforms for a while. I don't see much positive to it, and I see a lot of negative. That said, as he gets older, that's going to be the way that he and his friends communicate outside of text messaging. And I will entertain letting him have it at some point. I also just know the rate at which children are exposed to pornographic material and how that can affect their future sexual health. And I'm not in any hurry to help him get access to that kind of stuff sooner than it's coming.
Do you have any type of like numbers on what a kid's exposure to porn is increased if they are on social media versus not? And it's okay if you don't, because I put you on the spot.
No, I don't. And that would be an interesting study for us to run. We monitor close to 5 million children across the nation now. And so that's something I'll probably ping our data scientist about, because we know how many children encounter pornography each year,
Mm-hmm.
But as to where it's happening, that's something important to take a look at.
And do you have any idea about the age range that kids are exposed to porn at this point? Because I know it's way younger than when we were
It is way
kids.
younger. It is way younger. I mean, our study covered tweens and teens. So a tween is, an 8 to 12-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
but it's happening younger than 8. If you
Mm-hmm.
give your child an iPad with unfettered access, let's say you just want to catch a quick shower, and
Mm-hmm.
they're on Netflix without a parental control pin,
Mm-hmm.
boom, they have stumbled upon something. If they're on YouTube, it could be something that looks like innocent cartoons, but it's anime porn. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's the thing is the younger they are, the less they're able to even understand that this isn't good for them, or this is
Mm-hmm.
concerning, or maybe they just think somebody's being hurt. They don't understand it. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, if your children have unfettered access to content that allows pornographic material on its platform, it's only a matter of time. It's not a matter of if but when.
Mm-hmm. So my kids are not on social media. My son gets teased and made fun of that he doesn't have Snapchat and he's in the 8th grade. And I'm like, listen, high school's next year. You're going to get made fun of for so many other things than just Snapchat. Like,
Right.
just, it's fine.
Yeah.
So we don't do social media, and I am in a place where, and I don't have the answers for this, and I don't expect you to have the answers for this, but kind of what you spoke to, this is the way we interact. This is the world we're in. I really love social media. There's a whole lot of it that I hate, but I use social media as a faith tool, and there are people in the world hearing about Jesus and God and faith and overcoming obstacles because of social media. So I know that my children are going to be there. I know they're going to be in this space that's going to look drastically different down the road. So I am uh, cognizant about how I prepare them for that without them ever being exposed to that. And I look at it like, the way I consider it is, my background, both sides of my family were Pentecostal, and my parents were much more open with me in the world, but I have cousins that were incredibly sheltered and not allowed to access anything. So
Yeah.
then when they got freedom, they went insane with
Yeah.
all of it, right?
Yeah.
So and if you're listening, cousins, I love you, so does Jesus, you're good. um, so just saying, this is something that can be used for good, but this is something that can be used for bad, but you're not old enough to access it yet. I don't know how to set them up. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations or advice?
Yeah, I mean, you have to really take it case by case. Your child, their struggles. Do they have do they have a propensity to struggle with FOMO, maybe body image issues? I know personally, Instagram would have been horrible for me as a teenage girl. And so, sorry, I'm walking with you while I let my chihuahua out because she
You're
doesn't want to be in
totally
this
fine.
closed room anymore. But yeah, you have to evaluate when it's best for your child, and you have to talk openly and honestly about it. Right now, he's not even asking because he knows better. But if he were, let's say he wanted Snapchat at 11, I would say no, and here's why. There's this thing called Snap Maps in there, and if you have it toggled on, anybody that you're connected with will see your location so clearly, down to the level where they could zoom in and see what the front of the building that you're in looks like.
Mm-hmm.
As your mom, I wouldn't drop you off at the mall and just leave you there for 3 hours. I'm not going to let you walk 10 miles to school by yourself. I'm not going to let you have Snapchat. And that's just one of the reasons why. Also, there are bots out there looking to expose you to pornography and get images of yourself, and they will even offer you money. And while I know you're smarter than that, there are kids that have had lapses in judgment and have fallen into that trap. Again, I'm not ready for you to be just even navigating that world. So part of the way to talk to your kids about the why behind why you won't let them opens the door for you to have those conversations about things that are not comfortable, and will allow you, when it is time, to say, okay, I'm going to let you have this now, but you have to be cognizant of these things. And I need you to come to me when you encounter them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wasn't ready for my son to play Fortnite when it first came out. Again, I was mostly concerned about the addictive elements of it, but I was
Mm-hmm.
also worried a little bit about the violence and the group chat. But eventually I let him, and he knew to come to me when somebody messaged him. Somebody messaged him and said, "Hey, I'm horny. Let's chat here." And thankfully, because of the multiple conversations we had, he was able to show it to me without worrying that I would take it away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Another important thing to do is when you see things in the news, talk about it with your kids. So much of, even adults, but children's self-confidence is based on how many followers they have, how much engagement they have, and letting them know that accepting every friend request on whatever platform, even if it seems like a fellow 12-year-old or a friend of a friend, is not wise. It can be very bad for you. And children, very smart children, have been lured out of their homes and kidnapped and murdered by people who they thought were their friends. And so it's not something fun that we want to talk about with our kids. But if you don't, they're not going to understand why you don't want them to have this. They're just going to think you just want to say no for the heck of it.
Mm-hmm.
So having those tough conversations about the why behind your reasoning, it's the same thing. Well, why do I have to wear a bike helmet? Well, here's why. 50% of kids that don't wear one die in the ER. Just, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to tell them the tough things, and then they understand it's not because you're trying to control them. It's because you care for them. It is your job to keep them safe on this planet in real life and now in their digital life. And this is how you do it.
So my youngest he'll be 11. He'll be 11 next week. And he like, it's the funniest thing because he'll say, "Mom, can we download?" And I have another tip, parents. I have like parental settings on my kids' phones where they can't install or delete apps without my passcode, because that keeps you from them installing them while they're at school, downloading them while they're at school, and then deleting them before they get home. I learned this lesson from firsthand from a friend going through it with her sons, who were a little bit older than I was, or than my kids were. But the running line he'll say is like, "Mom, will you download this for me?" And I'll say no, and he'll say, "Oh, because that's where online predators hang out." Like that's his, like, because that's like the running line. And can I have this? No, online predators hang out there. No, it's just not even up for discussion. Like you said,
Yeah.
they need to know why. They need to not know that we're just like mean, controlling parents. Boomers. Okay, boomer, if you don't know what that is, that means we're old, even though we're not in the boomer generation. Kids are nuts. So yeah, so I think that's great, like what you just said. Like, give them the reason, let them know why you're trying to keep them safe. I know it gets harder the older they get, and the more, because we get into that, I'm reaching for my own independence, but I don't have the maturity to deal with the responsibility that comes with that. I'm so grateful I didn't have to grow up with Instagram in high school, because girls were terrible, and I can't even imagine having it on there. But I think it comes with educating and really talking very closely about that on the online gaming chat rooms. So I know that what I've been told in the coalition, in the space that I run in, is that that's the scariest, most dangerous area right now, because we don't have the visibility in those online chat rooms that is there on the social media platforms. Is this something that Bark is working on?
Yeah, we're actively working to get access. If anybody listening right now has a position of power at the large gaming networks, please email help@bark.us, and let's figure out a way to let our algorithm scan for predatory behavior and then alert parents so that their kids are safer. You as
Because
a corporation,
I'm sorry, because parents don't realize that
no,
is a space that predators are actively hanging out in and looking at.
Absolutely. And I'm thankful Microsoft recently launched an initiative to try to do better with that. And I'm grateful for that. And games like Roblox do a really good job of shutting down that sort of behavior when it's happening. But it's, where the kids are, that's where the predators are going to go. And if there are tools that can be used to prevent that, they should absolutely be used.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What is your, because it's heavy, it's dark, it's scary. There are people that will listen to this and freak out and say, I don't even need a monitoring app. I'll take all the tech away. But your kids are going to be exposed to it, whether they have it on their phone or they look at it on someone else's phone.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your greatest victory in this journey, and what is the most beauty that you've been able to bring from everything you've done up until this point on the journey?
That's a tough question. I think one of my greatest victories to date is just having confidence that, at least for now, my son will come to me when he encounters troublesome content, because I've laid the groundwork for the fact that we can have open and honest conversations about icky, uncomfortable, awkward things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that started at a very young age, just by like, when I was talking about him with him about his body parts, I would use their real names.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it is what it is. This is what it's called, and this is how it works, and the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been beautiful to me, that I haven't had to just not let him have access to everything. I've been able to give him some access and trust him and help him to be a responsible digital native. Another thing, one of the biggest challenges I had was just, how do I talk to my kid about sex and pornography when it just makes him squeamish? He does not want to talk about that stuff, especially not with mom. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures
Mm-hmm.
that I highly recommend for all parents. You can get it on Amazon, and they have a version for younger kids and a version for older kids. And it just helps to explain, what it is when it, I mean, it's a topic. I mean, it's just so hard,
Mm-hmm.
so hard. So being able to just give him materials and have these discussions, thanks to wonderful authors, is key. The Parenting in a Tech World Facebook group, we've got over 60,000 parents now in this closed Facebook group called Parenting in a Tech World, where we're talking about these exact issues. Whether your child is being cyberbullied or is a cyberbully, or your child is caught up in a sexting scandal or feeling pressured to send nudes. When do you give your child their smartphone? When do you let them have social media? We have all kinds of parents and experts in that group talking about this stuff in real time. So that's a win
That's
to
a
have
major
created.
win.
Yeah,
Major
to
win.
have created a community where we can just go and talk, because where do you go? Who do you talk to about this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I think also it goes back to that whole, like, not my child, not my son. And my kids, I was kind of introduced to having to have the porn conversation earlier than I was prepared for, because
mhm,
before I would tell my kids that I'm fighting for slaves. I'm bringing awareness for slaves. And who are the slaves? Well, they're kids that are forced to do things against their will, and they're, not kept in good circumstances. And that was really all they needed at that level. They didn't need any more details. And my youngest is
mhm,
still at that level. But my oldest had some kids mentioning porn at school,
mhm,
and he wasn't completely aware of what it was, but he knew the general idea of it. And we had a conversation where I point blank said, do you know what porn is? Because I knew the way he was responding to things. And he tells me yes, and that some of the older kids were discussing it. And so that opened a conversation where I was able to say, first off, those people don't want to be there or want to be doing what they're doing, even if you think they are. That's
mhm,
against their will, and that is the major gateway for trafficking. And then we went on to say, this isn't what it looks like, and this isn't what God created it for. And when you see that and when you consume that content, it changes your mind to think of it in a way that God didn't create it for. And so, but being able to come to a community like this, to have this
mhm,
resource, because there's a lot of women walking around that have mom guilt, that, oh my God, my kid found it and I let it happen. Or, oh my God, my kid's a bad kid that searched for it. Or,
yeah.
but that safe space that you've created with this, not technically created, but that you guys as a collaborative have created with this, is what we need. Like more than anything in our society right now, we need the ability to show up and sit around a table, whether it's figurative or literal.
Yes, and problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's really important to remind parents, myself included, is that a child's frontal lobe is not fully formed until the early 20s. And so good kids make bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
Good kids make mistakes. And
Mm-hmm.
so letting that filter down to your kids that like, hey, that's why you have a parent,
Mm-hmm.
is because you are not actually physically able to make good choices all the time. I trust that you'll do the best you can, but your brain's just not ready yet. That's why I'm here to help you until you get there. So, everybody is doing the best they can as a parent, and you can't beat yourself up about it, but you have to do what you can. There's a lot of free parental controls just built into things you already have, whether it's your cable service provider, internet service provider. Again, I mentioned Netflix has parental controls. um, you know there's a lot of your router. I mean, there's a lot of things that if you just do a little bit of Googling, you can implement to just help that parenting burden that we have with limiting our child's access. Um, and again, the screen time thing is key. The less time they have on a screen, the less chances they have to encounter bad stuff. But, then there's the bus, then there's
Right.
friend houses. There's, it used to be when kids went for play dates or sleepovers, it was like, do you have a gun? Is it unloaded, et cetera? Now it's, do your kids have unfettered access to the internet? So
Girl, I've had this exact conversation, like your heart to my heart. It's like you're concerned whether they have guns in their house. You also need to be concerned about whether they have a password on their Wi-Fi or parental settings or what are they doing in the chat room. So yeah, I really, really appreciate you sharing with our audience and educating us and sharing your story and being just coming from a vulnerable, authentic place to say, we don't have all the answers, but we're working towards them and we're striving together.
yes.
What would you want to say to maybe the mom that has a 17, 18-year-old in high school and she's not prepared for this and she hasn't set up for this up until now, and all of a sudden she's faced with it, whether she likes it or not?
Yeah.
What would you just kind of leave her with?
That's probably the hardest use case, honestly, because by the
Mhm.
time a kid is 18, they're an adult. By the time they're 17, they're almost an adult, and it's really hard. And so, um, letting your child know that they can come to you free of judgment for the hardest things possible, and you are going to love them through it and support them through it, is key. It's kind of like those parents that set up a text code, if their kids are at a party and there's drinking and they want to leave, but they're embarrassed. I could never do that with my parents. I would be too afraid that I get in trouble. So I would just sit there and bear it. But letting your kids know, like, hey, I realize that your world is not going to be perfect. You are not going to make perfect choices. I am here to protect you. I'm here to love you. That's where you are in the world of a 17-year-old. Not only that, but just knowing their landscape. The rate of suicide is the second leading cause of death now in kids 10 to 17. So if you haven't talked to your child about mental health and suicide, it is time when they're 17, if not much, much sooner. Talking about pornography and how it changes your brain and impacts your relationships down the road is also really important. Talking to them just about mental health and the state of things. It's just, if they're 17 and they're struggling and you're struggling and you have not had those tough conversations yet, start with that. But then honestly, it might be time to reach out to a professional, your child's pediatrician, mental health support specialists. There are resources at schools. Bottom line is, get the help you need. If you and your gut feel like something's not right, it's never too late to take the first step to try to make it right. So don't give up, is what
Mhm.
I'd say.
Thank you. I think that's great. I think that's solid information. It's about having the conversations with your children
Yes.
and not just creating a community that's a safe space for parents, but we have to create that safe space with our children
Mhm.
and let them know that they can talk to us about the scary things. Got it. That's my biggest wish and my biggest hope for my children, that they just know they can talk to me. And
Yes.
it breaks my heart if they don't ever feel that open door. So
Yes.
thank you
Yeah.
for putting that out there. Thank you for sharing that with everyone. And we so appreciate your time. You've given the bark.us website. Where can people follow you? Because you do some great, insightful, encouraging social media work yourself. What,
Oh, thank you.
how does everyone stay in the loop here?
Yeah, so if you want to connect with me, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the places, it's just my name. Thankfully, my name is super unique, so I was able to grab all the handles, and that's Titania Jordan. So just Google Titania Jordan and connect with me, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever, and I'm happy to talk with you. Same thing, my email address is just titaniajordan@gmail or titania@bark.us. Um, I'm not always quick to respond because my inbox is a hornet's nest,
Right,
but
right.
I'm happy to connect with anyone here.
I'll put all of that in the show notes. What's your personal favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Oh, I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram. We're gonna get
I
there
do
one
too.
day. No,
I
like
do too.
I have found a really hard time of finding like organic connection over there. Whereas I don't know, I'm an old school Facebook kind of girl, but yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get there. We'll get
we'll
there.
get there.
Thanks so much. Have a great day. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You take good care.
You too.
Bye.